Community Focus has been brought to you by the Crum Agency, providers of MEMIC Insurance. Their telephone number is 734-254-1976, and they are online at krummagency.com.
You're listening to the station focusing on the Plymouth-Canton community. This is Community Focus on 88.1 The Park. Good evening and welcome to Community Focus. I'm Bill Keith. On Community Focus, we talk to people of interest in our community. Our guests this week are Nick Brandon and Aaron Mihalko from In the Band Music Appreciation Studio. They're a new organization in Plymouth that will provide students with an opportunity to explore their musical interests. Hi, Nick and Aaron.
Hello, Bill.
It's good to have you guys here to talk a little bit about what In the Band is, and it's part of the new Plymouth Arts and Recreation Complex at the former Central Middle School. Can you tell us what you have planned for In the Band?
We have a lot planned for In the Band. It's really been a vision that's been years in the making. I think the three words that continue to come to mind when we think about the building of this organization is community, access, and opportunity. We want to create community for young musicians. I feel like young musicians are a little bit of a forgotten group. Student athletes are well taken care of. There's plenty of places for them to go to find elements of team and elements of community. Other artistic endeavors in the community seem to always have homes. And it's those young musicians, which Aaron and I both were growing up, that seem to be the group that really need a place to go. And not just a place to go to create, but a place to go and create and build relationships with other people like them. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea of In the Band. And so based on that, we want a place where bands can practice, where music education can be furthered, and also where music can be discovered. And I think those three elements are kind of what we're building the entire program around.
What do you see as some of the resources that In the Band will provide for students?
Well, the space that we have over at Park, and that's Park with a C, the Plymouth Arts and Recreation Complex, is just a fantastic space for us. Basically, what Don Sunan, who's just been so terrific to work with, hooked us up with was one of the large classrooms on the second floor. And then there's kind of a side room next to it that's separated by a door and actually a glass window. So even without anything in it, it already kind of looks like a studio, which is a really great setup. But in the large room, it's basically a rehearsal space that is not just your basic empty rehearsal space where bands can come, but a fully functional, fully stocked rehearsal space with instruments. So we'll have 2 sets of drums. We'll have bass guitars and bass amps, electric guitars and electric guitar amps, effects pedals, one-stop shop for everything a band would need to rehearse. So the advantage of In the Band for our young musicians is not just a space they can go and not just a community they can build, but literally they can come and all they need is themselves to play. I mean, even guitarists, you can of course bring a guitar, but it's all there, which helps those who have instruments, but really also helps those who don't have the opportunity to have instruments. So it's a place where a student literally could get in their car after school, drive to, bring nothing with them, and be able to have a full band rehearsal. The side room, which is adjacent to it, is going to become a music listening space with at least one, hopefully 2 or 3 vinyl record players and a setup of as many classic albums on vinyl as we can get, so then students can listen to music the way it's supposed to be listened to, which is on a vinyl record. So we want to have a space for creators, but we want to also have a space for appreciators.
You mentioned that the roots for In the Band go back to the time when you guys were in your own bands, probably when you were in high school. How did it transition from something that maybe was just kind of like a seed back then to something that you decided that you wanted to launch?
Yeah, so I'll let Aaron speak to the more modern kind of execution of when we've actually got it going. But for me, there's 2 aspects of the idea. One is the sort of, wouldn't it be cool if part of the idea, which we all have on a daily basis. Thinkers like me, we're always thinking of ideas. And I was probably 13 years old as a young drummer and said, God, wouldn't it be cool if there was a space in Plymouth where I could go and play? Because no matter what, when you're at home, you're always conscious of volume. And especially as a drummer, I hate to admit this, but I was a little guilty growing up, just constantly filling my mom and dad's house with noise. So, there was always this idea of, wouldn't it be cool if there was a place where young people could go and explore music and play music. I think for me personally, the idea really came about with 2 things. Number one was the opening of Park. When Don Sunan bought the old Central Middle School and decided to repurpose it into Arts and Recreation Complex, that to me opened the door for this idea. But for me, it was really leaving coaching. I was the the varsity basketball coach at Plymouth High School for 2 years and was with the program for 5 years. Because of my new job and when the reality came about that I wasn't going to be able to coach anymore, I felt like it was time to build a new program and something that had nothing to do with athletics. And my real first love in life is music. And so it was the ending of coaching and that feeling of, God, I really still want to continue to work with young people. I really want to build a program. I want to build something from scratch, kind of like what I try to do with Plymouth basketball that inspires kids and gives them opportunity and gives them areas for team and community. And that's where In the Band started. So I approached Aaron with the idea, and Aaron, you can take over in terms of what we've done recently.
Most recently, obviously, we've started loading up the facility with instruments. We've already received I'd say a generous helping of donations from a few of my friends and acquaintances. So we've got, 3-4 guitars in there right now, 3-4 amps, a couple of drums. We're looking to outfit it with a lot more of a modern electric setup where what we've really been focusing on lately is kind of protecting hearing. So, you get in those band environments, it can often be pretty loud. So we're going to introduce some cool items like some headphone listening, kind of mixing through headphones. Actually, Nick and I were part of a small little project, a few years ago where we would practice with headphones set up, and we really found that to be advantageous and helpful to really, kind of hear each other a lot better, and it kind of helps you improve as a musician too. And even going back to what Nick was talking about, I was probably, 3rd, 4th grade when I got my first guitar. And instantly, I already wanted a band. I didn't have any chops whatsoever, but I knew I needed 3 other guys, and that eluded me for basically most of my school life. When Nick approached me about this opportunity, it was really exciting because it sounded like something I really wanted from age 10 on up. And now here it is, and now we can be those impactful people that make that available to kids that back when we were really jonesing for it as teenagers, it just wasn't available to us. I had symphony band, I had concert band throughout my entire school life playing saxophone, but it never landed with me. It never gave me that excitement, that level of excitement that I would have listening to classic rock tunes, modern rock tunes, and really wanting to duplicate that feeling.
I'm sure your neighbors at Plymouth Arts and Recreation Complex will appreciate the fact that it'll have the headphone capacity. I can imagine then the sound could get kind of loud for everyone in that building. The place would probably rock. As far as bands, they're probably used to practicing in their parents' basement, so I'm sure their parents will appreciate the opportunity to move them someplace else to practice. But what do you think will make In the Band an attractive alternative to just setting up in your basement and rocking out?
Young musicians will feel more free to create in this space. When you're in your parents' basement, you are not only bound by sort of making sure to keep volume down and things like that, and we're going to do what we can, but we're also going to rock. I told Don when we were sort of talking about the space, it was like, Don, you better put us in a corner of the building away from everybody because we're going to make some noise, and I mean that in a good way. You get young musicians away from home and you create something that's a really creative space. I'm a firm believer that for all artists, whether it be musicians or visual artists, that the space that you work in matters. And In the Band will not only offer a separate space away from home, but it's going to be decorated in a way that's very creative. We have some National Honor Society students from the park here that are helping us with the decorating, who are going to make their service project to come and help make In the Band a really creative space in terms of the way it looks. I think that when you're growing up at home, you're still at home, and you're, not that this ever happened to me, but your mom can still yell downstairs and tell you to clean your room, or your dad can tell you to stop playing so loud, and how are you supposed to sit there and imagine yourself as John Bonham when your dad's yelling downstairs to not play so loud? So
kind of kills the vibe.
Yeah,
snaps you back to reality.
Yeah, it sure does. So we just want to create a really free space. I think if there's one thing music needs in today's kind of industry, it's young musicians to grow up feeling like they can play what they want to play, kind of get back to that age where music was really important and really good, where people didn't feel bound by any creative stifling. They just kind of did what they wanted to do. And it's really consistent with what we want to create. We want students to make whatever kind of music they want to, whatever feels right to them, because I think that's where the really great bands develop.
You're listening to Community Focus. Our guests tonight are Nick Brandon and Aaron Mihalko. They're part of In the Band Music Appreciation Studio. It's a new organization in Plymouth that will provide students with an opportunity to explore their musical interests, especially in the format of a high school band. Have you found any other existing groups around the country that you're kind of modeling what you're doing after?
Not at all. All we've found is a lot of people saying, gosh, what a great idea. And some people almost saying, gosh, I wish I would have thought of that. And that's not to give ourselves credit or pat ourselves on the back. I just honestly feel like it all comes down to that young musicians are just a little bit of a forgotten group. And although Aaron and I are getting a little old, it hasn't been that long since we were in high school. And we remember that feeling of, the attention that so many other people would get for their various interests, whether it be athletics or even other endeavors. And those young rock musicians, they're kind of marginalized. And I hate to say that.
Outliers. Didn't really have a place in the school setting for sure.
Exactly. I think Aaron and I can both put ourselves in that position of just having a place where you can go. And I think, again, we talk about community, and so much of that will be the students themselves, the musicians that come and work with each other. But the other opportunity they're going to have is Aaron and I, two guys that have been playing in bands for a long time and play various instruments. Both of us have a wide range and taste of music and a wide range of abilities in terms of what we play. And so they're also going to have adults around that can help mentor them, and that goes from song structure to introducing them to music of the past that they maybe never heard of before. I know Aaron, is an exceptional guitar player, and I think one of the ideas would be, to give lessons. Not every kid out there who has talent can afford going and getting music lessons from a place that sells that sort of thing. So
that's a big component of why I'm there as well. I mean, I consider myself still to be learning guitar, even though I've been playing for 20 plus years now. I never quit evolving. I never quit learning, and it's fun to be able to kind of pass that along to someone else who has that interest, but maybe not the access. And maybe they have a guitar, but they only have a certain style that they know. They got into guitar because of punk rock, and they could be opened up to jazz. They could be opened up to rock, folk. I mean, I've touched it all. I enjoy it all. And that's the point, is I think there's a lot of variety. And I mean, there are a couple of things out there, like your traditional school of rock. When you hear that name, you think rock. And I think within the band, there's no real genre attached to it. It's free. It's open. If you want to come in and kind of be more mellow with an acoustic guitar and do some folk, maybe do some old, Nick Drake or Jim Croce, I don't know, something like that. We'll help foster that. We'll help grow that. We'll help push you in the right direction, whatever feels most natural. Maybe not put you, specifically in a genre just because it suits our tastes exactly.
And what really separates us from those sort of rock schools is the ones that I know of in the area are all businesses. Those are all profit businesses that are doing a great job. Trust me, those are great organizations, but they're in it to make a living. We're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We're not in this for profit. We're in this to have that inspiring moment to work with a kid and help change a kid's life who really has big musical dreams. So I think that's a big difference between us and anybody else that's out there right now, is that, we're doing this to create community and also to help our community to have a place that's really unique.
You mentioned that in the band we'll also have music listening opportunities, getting out the vinyl records and setting them up on the record player, and maybe even have group listening sessions where people can kind of listen as a group and kind of learn from each other. How do you see that starting, and what do you have planned? Any initial plans to get that kicked off?
The initial album that keeps coming to mind is Dark Side of the Moon.
I had a feeling. I had a total feeling that's what you were going to say.
For some reason, when I was sort of envisioning the specific activities that we would do, the concept of these listening parties was really inspiring to me. And that album kept coming into my brain slowly but surely. And it's sad to say, but albums are becoming artifacts. Really, really, really important artifacts, but they're becoming artifacts, in the digital world and with iPods and blah, blah, blah. The whole concept of an album as a piece of art is becoming something of the past, but also something that really needs to be celebrated and recognized. I grew up with albums that changed my life. It wasn't a song. It wasn't like, oh, you just hear something on the radio. And sure, when Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana came out, that was a big thing for me, but hearing the whole Nevermind album was maybe more significant. I think if there's one firm stance we will take, it's that we are going to celebrate the album. We're going to promote the legacy of the album, and our listening parties will be part of that. But then following that, we would give students an opportunity to discuss and analyze the work, and also potentially to maybe do some writing, like their own personal review of the album, and try and get them to think deeper about what the music was saying, what the lyrics were saying, and it's time.
Local high school bands are not known to be big money makers. How do you have envisioned funding of In the Band and keeping it something that's financially viable?
It's a great question. It's something that every nonprofit thinks about and comes up with plans for, and in some cases struggles with. We're in a really fortunate position. We've received some major funding from My Family's Foundation, which has really gotten us off the ground, which has been huge. But in the end, what we're going to try and do is generate fundraising through concerts. And at some point, probably once a quarter, what we're going to do is take all the bands that participate within the band and put on a concert at Park. You know, the advantage of that house that Don is building is they got this beautiful auditorium in there with a stage, and we could very easily move some equipment down there and host a concert and invite all the families of the bands and friends of the bands to come and watch. And that'd be really great for us because it would showcase the development of the musicians and kind of everything that we're working towards, but it also could be a really great fundraising opportunity for us. The one thing I believe very strongly is that you don't pressure the community to fundraise. You do your best to create a product that helps the community, that helps young people grow and be better people. And then through that, hopefully the generosity will just come naturally.
We've certainly in the early goings going to rely on the kindness of strangers and hopefully people that kind of see the vision and are as excited about it as we are. Like I said, we've already had several donations from a few of my friends, good friends that have donated some old music.
You're still in the process of setting up the studio and kind of targeting a launch date of February. Do you have any upcoming events planned?
We don't, but we're just now starting to get bands in there. We had our first rehearsal in the space last week. Aaron and I kind of had our inaugural jam, which was such a cool moment. I mean, it was like, gosh, you know, this is really coming together. So we're calling it a gradual rollout because that's exactly what it is. You know, Aaron and I both have full-time demanding jobs and we have other interests as well. So we're devoting as much time to it as possible. The space right now is fully stocked with our instruments. We're in the final stages of getting our audio system hooked up, and we have some students here at PCEP that are helping us with some decorating of the space. We're slowly but surely developing the listening room, and you know, Aaron used a keyword earlier, donations, and we're going to be looking for donations to help us with that as well. You know, there's a lot of people out there with vinyl collections that they might want to get rid of. Now, we are going to wait until after the 88.1 record show, which is on, February 20th? Yeah. So we want to make sure you guys have your day there because that's an important event for you guys. But at some point, we're going to kind of do a little donation drive where we can ask people for everything from record collections to instruments to anything that might help us that they want to get rid of and contribute it to a cause that will really help the community. If by, mid to end February, we can be fully operational where, maybe we're not fully decorated necessarily, but in terms of the instruments and the system and getting bands in and out of there, that's the goal right now. And I think we're going to be able to hit that goal based on the way things look right now.
What do people need to do to get involved if they want to possibly use the studio space or get involved on the ground floor in the band? We
welcome any involvement for sure. The biggest thing right now would be to contact us through our Twitter, which we just launched. I'd love to be like this expert on Twitter. I don't even know how to say this, but
the worst person to ask is me. So.
Twitter's new for me, but I will say our sort of Twitter handle or name is @InTheBandStudio. If we could get some involvement on there, if we could get some people to follow our Twitter site and kind of follow our activity through that'd be a great first step. And then through that, they can contact us. I think word of mouth is going to be everything in here because musicians are kind of contagious people. Once one band hears about us and uses us for what we have to offer, then other bands will hear about it. So we don't have visions of having a full slate of bands in and out starting in February. We think it will be gradual. We think it will be contagious. But certainly Twitter would be a good place to find us, and we'll make sure that all of our contact information is up there so that people can support in any way possible. And we welcome any community support we can get.
Well, thanks for taking time to join us and to share more about In the Band Music Appreciation Studio and what you guys have planned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
You've been listening to Community Focus. Our guests this week were Nick Brandon and Aaron Mihalko from In the Band Music Appreciation Studio, a new organization in Plymouth that will be providing students with an opportunity to explore their musical interests, especially in the area of high school bands. You can hear Community Focus every Wednesday at 5:45 on 88.1 The Park.
Community Focus has been brought to you by the Crum Agency, providers of Mihalko Insurance. Their telephone number is 734-254-1976, and they are online at krumagency.com.